The Steam Deck is in a much better position than it was several months ago, and so Valve has added a bunch of new features for this device right here. But I always think there's room for improvement. The first feature the Steam Deck should have is the ability to mirror your screen onto a display. More specifically, in game mode. Well, typically when you would dock your Steam Deck into any dock, whether it's the Valve one or a JSOX one, it would output to whatever display you have it connected to, whether it's a TV or a monitor. But the main Steam Deck screen is in fact turned off. I want the ability to still use my Steam Deck screen, even if I'm outputting to a different display. You know, just have it mirrored. This would be exceptionally useful for recording gameplay off of a capture card, as I wouldn't have to resort to using an OBS window as my main gameplay window, you know? The next feature I want to talk about are themes. Yes, I've mentioned themes in practically every feature request video I've made, but with Valve adding support for custom boot up animations, a feature that, while is very appreciated, you'll only see like once a month, if not less than once a month. This shows that Valve is not only okay with customizing aspects of the Steam Deck experience, they're also willing to help support it. And there are reports that suggest that Valve may add boot up animations to the Steam Point Store. Alright, that's enough of my tirade about boot animations. Why themes? Well, because around 95% of the time when you're not playing games on your Steam Deck, trying to select games to play on your Steam Deck, you're probably in this menu right here trying to figure out what game you want to play on your Steam library. Other people have figured out how to theme your Steam Deck's UI, even before they figured out how to replace the boot animation. As for why Valve couldn't, or perhaps wouldn't implement themes, I really couldn't tell you as to why, but I'm hoping it's something Valve adds in the future. Next up is more touchscreen controls. Steam Input is a robust system for basically any controller that works on PC. There's no shortage of functionality with Steam Input. Bind keys to other keys, bind keys to combo keys, bind keys to entire menus. When it comes to the Steam Deck's own controls, there's basically nothing that it can't do. But there is one major frontier that's basically unexplored: the touchscreen. Touchscreen functionality on the Steam Deck is kind of basic. You basically have two modes, mouse mode and touchscreen. And for like 90% of people, that's okay. But for someone that, say, plays a lot of MMOs, using the touchscreen as an extra avenue of control on top of every other control you have available, that sounds like a match made in heaven. And believe it or not, Valve has something exactly like this on their Steam Link mobile app. In the current iteration of the Steam Link app on phones, you can have custom touchscreen controls. Sure, you can have buttons like your face buttons, your trigger buttons, trackpads, shoulder buttons, analog sticks, D-pads, basically everything you would want in a regular controller. But in addition to all of those buttons, you have 8 customizable buttons that you can set to be basically any function, and you can place them anywhere on your screen. My idea is not just a simple transplant of this system onto the Steam Deck, but also an evolution as well. Imagine the ability to have an on-screen button on your screen that you can touch and hold, and it pulls up a radial menu that you can then control. Now imagine other things you can do as well. The next feature Valve should consider is the ability to choose whether or not you want to boot directly into desktop mode or boot into game mode every time. By default, whenever you restart your Steam Deck, it automatically goes into game mode, even if you initiated the restart from desktop mode. Personally, I probably wouldn't use this feature, but I can see that there's a lot of value to add with this feature, especially for people that want to test stuff in desktop mode. And Valve, if you're worried about regular users enabling this functionality and not knowing how to get back into game mode, then you could probably tuck this away in the developer settings. The next feature I want to look at is some sort of built-in clip recorder. Every console from the PS4 generation and above has the ability to record gameplay footage. Though obviously you can't just continually record it. It's like 30 seconds tops. Would it affect performance? Absolutely, I'm sure it would affect performance. I would argue maybe a 3 to 10% decrease in performance. But I do think some people would take that trade-off to be able to record gameplay directly. I know I would. I've seen Steam Deck plugins that can record gameplay footage for you, obviously with some performance loss, but that's to be expected. And now we're veering into some territory that may not be possible for the Steam Deck 1, things that seem more like a Steam Deck 2 feature. And the first of these is variable refresh rate. This is definitely a feature that has to come with a new panel, but essentially variable refresh rates change their refresh rates on the fly, like think FreeSync or G-Sync, both of which are a form of variable refresh rate. Most screens run at 60Hz by default, or in the case of the Steam Deck, you can set it to 40Hz manually. But on a panel that supports FreeSync, when frame rate drops below 60, so does the refresh rate as well. So instead of running like 51 FPS on a 60Hz display, it then becomes 51 FPS on a 51Hz display. It matches up. This prevents screen tearing, and also has the side effect of saving battery life as well. In theory, this would mean you wouldn't need separate sliders for the frame limiter as well as the refresh rate limiter. If the built-in panel had FreeSync built into it, they could both be the same slider. Of course, that's just wishful thinking. The next feature I want to talk about is the ability to download games while in sleep mode. If you've had the Steam Deck for an extended period of time, you know this is something the Steam Deck cannot do right now. While downloading, the deck will not go to sleep automatically, but if you attempt to manually put it to sleep while downloading, it won't download until you wake it back up. Downloading while in sleep mode would be a godsend. The next feature I would like is the ability to select where I install the games every time I install a game. So typically, you would select one of your drives to be your default download drive, which is marked by this star right there. And by default, if you install any game from your library, it will automatically download to whatever drive you marked as your favorite drive. Unless, of course, you don't have enough storage on that drive. But if you go to a game store page instead and press play now, Steam will prompt you to install the game. But not only that, it'll ask you where you want to install the game. I want the option for Steam to ask me every time I install a game where I want to install the game. Like obviously if I have just an SSD, this option wouldn't make much sense. But I would say most Steam Deck users have an SD card in conjunction with their SSD. And for those of you who are particular about where you want to install your games, for example, AAAs in your SSD and older AAAs and indie titles in your SD card, I think having the option to display this dialogue is very important to the experience, Valve. Maybe not for everyone, but for me at least. Next is the ability to plug your Steam Deck into your computer to do a couple of things. First would be the ability to plug your Steam Deck into a PC and just transfer files directly. At first it seems like a no-brainer. I mean, I can plug my phone into my computer and transfer photos and all that stuff. Heck, the PSP had that feature and it's been like over 15 years since that thing came out. At minimum, I just want the ability to plug my Steam Deck into my desktop PC and then transfer files between the two via USB. In theory, it should be possible. Whether or not Valve will do it this generation or next generation is a different story. Another feature I'd like to see is the ability to plug my Steam Deck into my desktop and just use the controls. Currently, this isn't a feature, and Valve's official recommendation for this kind of setup is to just remote play things from your PC to your Steam Deck. And honestly, I don't want to do that, especially with my unusual setup with ultra-wide monitors as well. And finally, the last feature I want to talk about is Ad-Hoc gameplay. Think Nintendo DS wireless play. You didn't need a router for that. All you needed was 4 DSs and 4 copies of whatever game you wanted to play, and you could play with your friends basically anywhere, like on a bus or something like that. Heck, the PSP also had the same feature as well. And yes, I am fully aware that a lot of Steam games probably wouldn't be able to support this feature. But I do think if Valve makes this a feature, I believe without a shadow of a doubt that there will be developers that want to capitalize on this feature for the Steam Deck, if it ever comes to fruition. And yes, we live in a world where we play with all of our friends on games online using Wi-Fi or Ethernet or whatever. Hell, the Nintendo Switch, a modern console to this day, has this feature. So that's the whole video. I know Valve watches these videos, so I decided to shoot my shot. If you wish to directly support high-tech lowlife, you should check out the link in the description below for our Patreon page. And if you like this video, you should give it a thumbs up and subscribe as well. And if you want, you can also join my Discord server. As always, links in the description down below for all of this.